Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to a few of you, and good evening to our host. She'll tell you more about that in a moment while we're saying good evening. My name is Gregory Sneed, and welcome to the community briefing. Our guest today is Mr. Ramon Hervey, and he'll be the third, right?
The second.
The second, right? And oh yeah, I had my glasses on. Looks like there were three lines there. I thought it was the second, but listen, maybe I had it wrong. And he'll be joining us shortly to share some wonderful information. My name is Gregory Sneed. Name my company Lifesaver Financial Services. I help my clients keep more of the money that they make through insurance solutions, life insurance, annuities, long-term care, final expense. I'm also a financial coach and a financial literacy trainer because I firmly believe that when you feel better about your money, you feel better about your life. And now the queen, she's really a queen because she's in the, she's over in the, near the motherland there. She's really a queen, Queen Crystal Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you, Mr. Ramon. Mr. Harvey. We are so happy to have you. And yes, I'm in Cairo, Egypt. So I am in the motherland right now. And having some amazing experiences over here. So you are tuned into the community briefing, and myself and my Stephen and Greg and Miss Robin Billups. We're the co-hosts of this wonderful program, which is powered and sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars and the the Black Business Association, the BBA, and sponsored currently by Southern California Edison, Wells Fargo Bank, and SoCal Gas. So we are so pleased with that. So thank you so much. This platform is for you, and so you can meet our leaders and stakeholders that are making things happen for us. And so please use the platform to introduce yourself, and there's a networking platform as well. And so with that, I am going to turn it back over to Mr. Greg.
All right, helps to unmute. So thanks, welcome back. So our guest today is got some wonderful information. Ramon Hervey II, named after his dad. And it's interesting you did the second instead of Junior. You'll tell us a little more about that.
And what I was named.
Say it again?
I said I didn't have any say in what I was named, but the story goes that I was named the second because he didn't want me to be called Junior.
Yeah.
A lot of times when Junior's at the end of your name, they forget your first name and they start calling you Junior.
Exactly.
He didn't want that to happen, so he decided to name me the second. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and it's interesting in today's times now, the third often gets called Trey.
Yeah, right.
So
shortcuts. We're in a shortcut world.
So Mr. Hervey has an extensive background as a music executive, artist manager, author. Just has just done a lot. Let's see. Look, where do we go from the beginning here? So Ramon, let me see if I can pronounce your middle name. Is it Trichet?
No, just Trish.
Trish. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get a little too fancy with it, right?
Okay.
Trish. According to my information here, you were born in Chicago.
Correct.
And his mother was named Winifred, and his father was Ramon T. And he went to Lompoc Junior High School. Is that correct?
Wow, you're going way back. Yeah. I went
to Junior High School and went to Whittier College. He is a music executive and producer, writer, publicist, and artist manager. Let's see. He went to. I look like you started the job as a flight attendant, and then you got into the music industry. That was with Pan Am, huh? Pan Am Airlines.
Yeah, I was one of the first males and black men to be hired as a flight attendant by Pan Am.
Awesome.
In those days, the airlines, no American Airlines had any men, actually. All the European airlines like British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France. They all had men, but only women in the U.S. And so when I got hired, I killed two birds with one stone as a male and as a black man.
Right. And when the terminology migrated from stewardesses to flight attendants, you know?
Yeah, yes. Well, steward, it's kind of, in the biz, you were referred to as a flight attendant, but to consumers, we were stewards
Yeah.
or stewardesses. Yeah.
Stewards, exactly. From the shipping business
Yeah.
cruise, yeah. Let's see. So he ended up becoming a publicist for Starlight Music, and then he ended up joining Hamlet Marsh Publishers as an editor. He was with Motown Records as a publicist, and he worked with renowned artists such as Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, and he worked on publicity campaigns. And so then, after Motown, he joined Rogers and Cowan as a publicist and writer, and he got a promotion there to music director and vice president of music and talent. From there, you know that he had a marriage to Vanessa, the former Miss America, and they have I think 3 children, right? Three.
Yeah, we have three children, 2 daughters,
Children.
and one son.
Mm-hmm. And so he has also written a book, and it's called The Fame Game. He's going to tell us more about that. So there you go, Stephen, holding it up. So it is my pleasure to welcome Ramon Hervey II to our virtual stage to share with us some great information about what he's doing, what he will be doing, and the fun times that he's had. So please join me in welcoming Ramon Hervey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your community briefing. I appreciate the support. Yeah, that's a capsule of what's going on. Some of the timing is a little off, but I've been in the business for over 4 decades, really. I started back in the 70s. The Pan Am job was in the mid 70s, and I was based in London, England for 4 years there. And Starlight Artists, the company, was a talent booking agency that they represented some pretty well-known British acts at that time. A group by the name of the Bay City Rollers were a really big pop group everyone said they were about to become the next Beatles. And then there was a group of R&B group called Clem Curtis and the Foundations, another rock group called Marmalade. And so that was my first entry job into the music industry in London. And then from there, one of the groups that I was working on, a group called Kenny, I got an offer to be an editor to start a magazine called Poster by that company called Hamlet Marsh. So I became an editor of 2 music magazines in England because I got laid off basically from Pan Am. They told me they were going to hire me back, but it never really came. So I ended up working there, and that was a fun. The magazine was based on posters where the kids could take the pictures, like a double page spread out, and put it on their wall, and then we wrote the editorial on the back. And I was the only writer on the whole staff, and so I made up names of other, because I told them, I said, look, I don't want everyone to think that we only have one writer, so if you don't mind, I like to make up some names of different, so to make it look like we had a staff. So that magazine took off pretty well, and then we launched another one called Superstar Magazine. And then ultimately I came my time up, and I had a decision to make whether I would stay and get my work permit was going to be up, and if I stayed to become an English, without having the American hookup, and I decided to come back to the States, and that's when I ended up getting a job at Motown. The funny thing about getting to Motown was, for people that don't know, they were originally based in Detroit. But when I started working with them, they had just moved their entire operation to to Los Angeles, and they were housed in the old CNN building on Sunset. But I had a part-time job working at a photomat booth. Um, and a friend of mine, who I went to college with, a guy by the name of Bruce Tollerman, he wrote, he took pictures for Soul Magazine, which was a really popular music magazine back then in LA. And he told me that Motown was looking for a writer publicist, and I got a job there working under the wings of Bob Jones, who had been at the company for quite a few years. And I did work there along with, at that time, the artist that you mentioned, but because I was junior, the way Berry Gordy struck Motown, it had a class system with inside the company. So my main responsibility was to work with Black Press and really to work with more of the second tier artists. Although I did work on, like you say, if Diana Ross had a concert, I would handle all the black people, all the Black press that wanted tickets, or, for Marvin Gaye. I was involved in marketing meetings with Stevie Wonder. In fact, my very first meeting with Stevie Wonder was when he recorded Songs in the Key of Life, which is probably the most famous album of his and successful album of his career. And he had called the meeting because he wanted he wanted to find out what everybody from each department was going to do for his album. And during his presentation of the album, he said, well, one of the first things I really want for this album is I want a billboard in Times Square that's so big and so bright that even I can see it. And that's how he kind of launched the meeting. And that has always stood. And I've been fortunate over the years. I've been friends with Stevie. We've worked on a couple of other things since our time in Motown. And I saw him after a show one time, and at an after party in New York. He had played Madison Square Garden, and I went over to say hi to him. He said, "Oh, Ramon, sit down, let's talk. How's everything going?" And I said, "Stevie, do you remember how we first met? I was in a marketing meeting, and this is what you said." And I said, "Do you remember saying that?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I remember saying that." But yeah, so Motown was a really great experience because at that time Berry Gordy was next to the Johnson Publishing, he was one of the most successful Black businessmen in the U.S. And he had done it as an independent record company, which made his challenges even much greater because he was competing against all the big record distributors at the time, Warner Brothers and Sony, CBS, EMI. So it was very, very difficult to have, but. Mm-hmm. Berry was, it was a great learning experience to see a Black business that's that successful for me coming in the door. And also just to see the amount of tutelage that he provided for his artists on every level. I mean, he had the best songwriters, the best producers. He hired the best choreographers. He really trained his talent and prepared them for mass commercial success. And all those stars of that time, Marvin Gaye and Diana Ross and Stevie, the Jackson 5, Smokey, the Four Tops, Gladys Knight and the Pips. I mean, all these groups, they have been able to sustain their careers, I think, due to the fact that they were given such great tutelage at Motown. There was, some problems that were also they incurred working through Motown too, but it still is, one of the really great, like a historical landmark in terms of the music industry for a Black company to have accomplished what Berry Gordy did with Motown. So that was a great experience, and then from there. I ended up getting a job at Rogers and Cowan, and Rogers and Cowan was one of the top PR companies in Hollywood at the time, and I was the only Black executive there. They were the first independent. A lot of people may or may not know that when the movie industry first started in Hollywood, the studios controlled everything, meaning they managed the talent, they agented the talent, they had all the talent were basically employees. So they didn't have a right to go out and hire their own publicists. They didn't have a right to have their own agent, their own managers. The studio heads controlled everything, and they dictated who would become stars for that studio. And Rogers and Cowan was one of the first, was the first uh, independent public relations companies that talent went to and could actually pay them to represent them. And they opened the floodgates to other companies. And at around the same time, agents started to flourish as well as managers, and it changed the whole structure of Hollywood. So I, was very fortunate to get a job there, and I got it working on Paul McCartney. It was my first assignment from the Beatles. He owned the publishing to Buddy Holly's catalog, who was a very well-known rock and roll star in the '50s. And I was hired as a freelance writer to put together a press kit for Paul's approval to promote his special week of Buddy Holly, the tribute week to Buddy Holly. And I delivered it, and and Paul liked it. And as a result, I ended up getting a job. They offered me a full-time job, and I ended up working there for 4 years. So that when you mentioned that span at Rogers and Cowan was 4 years, and I did get some promotions. I ended up being the first Black to ever be a vice president at that company towards the last year of my stay there, or the last 2 years of my stay there. But I got a chance to work with Bette Midler and James Caan, Elliot Gould, Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson, George Benson, Natalie Cole, the Bee Gees, Peter Frampton, Daryl Hall and John Oates, Herb Alpert, just a ton of people. And this was a really great opportunity, and it really gave me a chance to really hone my talents as a publicist and as someone that could sign business there. Richard Pryor was a client that I represented there as well when he was at the top. So I really got to work with probably some of the most influential talent. And I think when you're working with successful people who are also famous, you learn so much more because the amount of leverage and that they bring to someone like me as a service person is enormous in terms of the access that you get to media and everything else. So that tutelage there as well was very important. And then, around that same time, I started to believe that I wanted to launch my own be an entrepreneur, and I saw a way to do that. And I ended up partnering with a guy named Bob Gibson, and we created the name of a company. He had a company called the Gibson Group, and I ended up we changed the name to just the group, and we had a great run as a partnership, and I ended up representing it through that. That's when I did ultimately work and meet Vanessa Williams. But I managed Little Richard. I managed Andre Crouch, who's has since passed, but he's a 9-time Grammy Award-winning gospel artist. I worked with Natalie again. Bette Midler came to my company and worked with me, which was really a coup for me as a Black entrepreneur trying to build a company. Having a big star like that to endorse your company when she could have gone to anybody else was a huge stamp of approval for me. And so since that time, I then made a switch into management, and just because I think when you're a publicist, you're the last on and first to go. People come to you and everything's already done, and sometimes it's a mess. The music's not right, the image isn't right, and they expect you to make miracles and make it happen for them. And I wanted to be a manager because I felt that I had the skill set to be more influential in orchestrating and building and conceptualizing a talent and growing it, and seeing it from the beginning of the genesis of a talent, and then the sell through to the marketing and all that. So for the last 20 years, I've really been more of a manager than a publicist. And in my book, each job is a service job. Whether you're a publicist or you're a manager, you are performing a service. The difference between the two is most publicists get paid a retainer fee, and managers get paid a commission. So you have equity in your clients that you don't get when you're a publicist. You just get a flat fee. You negotiate a flat fee and a flat term. Usually in an entertainment business, it's a minimum of 3 months. It could go to 6 months, and then you renew your contracts on that basis. I've had an opportunity to, once I started my own company, beyond the management, I also produced events. Crystal, you said you were in Egypt. One of the things that I did was I used to represent, for about 3 years, I represented the International Cairo Film Festival. And one of my responsibilities was to bring big name celebrities over for their big gala opening every night. When I started on it, it was in its 33rd year or maybe 32nd year. So in the course of that, for 3 years, I booked people like Samuel Jackson, Priscilla Presley, Gabrielle Union, Goldie Hawn, and Kurt Russell. And all these people went over there, and Selma Hayek. And I brokered their deals, and basically the festival paid them a fee and took care of them for the 4 days that they were over there. And they opened their big, and they got an award, and so that was a great experience, and I got to go to Cairo to be a part of that. And I've done other, individual. I produced an album called NBA at 50, which was to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the NBA, which was a very fun project because I'm a huge basketball fan. And so we put together an album for that, and that was released on Polygram Records. I worked on a couple of films. One on Shirley Chisholm, who was the first African American and first woman to run for president in 1972. I worked with a young director on that film. I worked on another film that we did as a team, which was on Angela Davis, which was Free Angela and All Political Prisoners. And the Shirley Chisholm film won a Peabody Award, and the Free Angela film won a Image Award, an NAACP Image Award. And I produced a couple of big events, television specials for Babyface and for Andre Crouch. So I've been very fortunate throughout my career, and I'm still doing all that kind of stuff today. But about 3 years ago, I decided I didn't want to write a memoir, but a lot of people they've enjoyed listening to my stories and over the years, and I decided to write a book and to do something that would kind of brand me, as opposed to not having to rely on other people, do a service to myself and build my own brand, but to use my philosophy. So the book is really, it's called The Fame Game, an insider's playbook for earning your 15 minutes. And I call it a hybrid. It talks about, I go through the process of my own story as a young black guy, entrepreneur trying to make it in the music industry, which is, it's like the rest of our society. There's a lot of systemic racism in the music industry, the entertainment industry. When I first started, there weren't a lot of blacks around. So I didn't have a lot of, I did get mentors, but it was very challenging. And I go through sort of my trajectory of my career. And I also talk about an overarching, my approach to fame and success, because I don't think one of the things, I have some tenets of fame that are included in the book. And I say that one of them is fame is not a destination. It's really it's an accolade and it's a reward. So it's a byproduct of success. And I think if you're striving in business, regardless of whether you're in the entertainment business or you want to be an artist, whatever, you have to earn success to earn fame. And fame is very fleeting. And there's no guarantee that it's going to last forever. So if you don't have success to fall back on, and that's your only thing that you're hoping to accomplish, then I don't think you can be successful. And so I talk about that, and I use the case studies of some of my most famous clients, like I said, Richard Pryor, and I share stories of what level of fame they were at when I first started working with them, what influence I had on them, did I move the needle, what were my challenges, and just a different, the other thing I don't believe is that fame is for everybody. It's just like some people can't drink. They may not want to, admit to it, but they can't hold their liquor. And some people can't hold their fame. They're just not suited for it. It's a different animal. And so I try to explain how different people, and there's no one path to fame. And the stories in my book, I reveal the different paths that each of these big people, famous people have taken. Also, the fact that in all my career, we never really sat around and talked about being famous. It was always about being successful. How do we merge? I think that success in our business is equated by the marriage between the art form, whether it's a record, live performances, music. I mean, whatever the music, whatever the genre, TV, film, or even being an author. It's when the quality of the artwork and the commercial success of it merge together. And I think when you have a convergence of those two things and they happen on a consistent basis, you have more opportunities to sustain a career and potentially get 15 minutes of quote unquote fame. But that all comes from that success. And that's, I try to explain that in the book. And because another tenet is I basically say that success and fame doesn't come with a warranty. So even if you're successful for a couple of years, it doesn't mean it's going to last forever.
And it can evaporate quickly.
Pardon?
It can evaporate quickly.
Yes, exactly. And, the public is ultimately they're the ones who arbitrate and decide, who's famous. And, so I tell people, don't worry, don't obsess about being famous, obsess about being the best that you can be. Because, ultimately the public is going to decide if your project, if they're tired of you or whatever. A good case of that is like the Bee Gees, they had several different, I worked with them and they had several different times in their career where they were successful, but then they hit, almost rock bottom, and then they were able to revive their fame. And at the time that I worked with them, they were the most successful group in the world. They had 5 number one singles in the top 10 at the same time. But then disco music, they were, they reached the height of their success and fame being disco artists. But then disco music died. And the industry helping to hasten that. They didn't want, for whatever reason, they didn't want to, disco music to be sustained in our industry. And so when the public say, okay, we're not going to, the radio stations, nobody wanted to play disco anymore. So a lot of those talents that made their life, their lifeline was that genre of music, they lost it, and they all had to struggle, and it really hurt the Bee Gees because they were the top of the, cream of the top, and they never really recovered after that. They never were able to regain their footing in any other genre after that. I mean, they still sustained and they did live performances, and they lived off of the success of their big hits that they had, but they never achieved the same amount of hits that they had once recorded. So those are the kind of stories that I talk about in the book. And the takeaway I think is just I think with social media has only been around for 12 years, and I think a lot of people put a little bit too much weight on it. They expect miracles to happen because of the amount of followers they have, but only 1% of the people in social media and there's millions that are on social media that only 1% are in that high threshold, meaning they have over 1 million followers. And of those people that are in that high threshold, most of those were famous people before social media came about. So they helped to elevate the position of those platforms. And they're the ones who are getting the most benefit, although social media is creating a voice for a lot of young entrepreneurs who can be successful. They're not all going to be famous, but a lot of people are making money from being able to promote their businesses and be totally digital. So it has opened some doors for some people, but I just think when you look at newspapers and you look at radio and even television, which started in the 1930s and was mass consumed in the 50s, and those others, they've had more sustainability over a longer period of time. And I think the jury is still out on how influential social media will remain. Also, in my studies on doing the book, the reality is too that a lot of people seem to be obsessed with fame, but very few people do become famous. There's a guy named Samuel Arsman, and he is a mathematician, scientist, author, and he came up with a formula to try to figure out how many famous people there is in the world. Over 7 billion people, 0.00086 are considered famous.
Wow.
So your chances of becoming very famous are very slim. And compared to, I think a couple of things have happened recently. One, the most famous person in the world right now, supposedly, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But when you think of him, then you look at Queen Elizabeth II, who just passed away, obviously. Over half of people in the world watched her funeral. So that's another whole level of fame. What other show or anything else has half the world tuned into? So that's another level of fame that's just beyond comprehension. I mean, I was just shocked that when I heard that. And this is just earlier this week, 500 million, 4 billion people watched her funeral. So
and not only that, actually shut down businesses for a whole week. The only thing did that was COVID. Yeah. They shut down businesses and sporting events in order to honor the Queen Elizabeth. So I'd say she's a little bit more famous than Dwayne, even though he's cute. He's a little bit more famous than The Rock.
But that's how relative it is. But a lot of people, they think of fame as something. I think that's one thing that I think if you read my book, then you'll see that it's not as easy, the portrait of famous people, what they go through to sustain fame, the amount of rejection that they have to go through, the fact that nobody, Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, all the famous people I've worked with, they've all had to endure failures. And projects that bombed or tanked, and then they have to go back to the drawing board. And just like anything, you have a business and you have something that hits and then it doesn't sustain, and then you got to come up with something different. And we all have different emotional attachments to the things that we do. And I think when you're famous, you're under a microscope more so than the average person. So everything you do is magnified beyond what normal people have to deal with in making their decisions and doing things for their business that are important, because every time they make a mistake, it's not reported on in the same depth.
So some of the most powerful and richest people in the world aren't famous at all. You wouldn't
exactly.
know.
Yeah,
And
it's not the answer. It's not the end all, and it's
yeah,
a lot of people don't realize it's just, and some people don't like it. They get it and then they realize, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I don't want to deal with this. I was watching a story not too long ago. Gwyneth Paltrow was, A-list part. She gave up acting for the most part because she just didn't like dealing with the fame part of it. And she runs a very successful cosmetics business. And she goes,
mm,
I like to do this. I come on and occasionally I do an interview to help promote my business, but I'm not being trolled. I'm not having to be, questioned or, now with social media, that's the other thing. Anyone can say whatever they want about you. And some people, they absorb every single comment that's made about them. And it's just impossible to dissect. You have to be able to, you know, I think live without the noise, be able to block out the noise, because if you let that infiltrate your life, it's hard to manage.
you drew a great analogy between saying that some people are unable to handle their liquor
Right,
and versus people are unable to handle the fame.
right.
And that was very powerful because it can be intoxicating.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And then the other, I think the problem that you have is that you can lose it so quickly, as you had mentioned earlier. You look at somebody like Will Smith. He made a really, I think,
Poof.
dumbfounded decision by doing something like that on one of the most watched shows in America or in the world. I mean, if he would have done that on some little it wouldn't even have mattered as much. But he did it on one of the biggest scale things, and then the PR and the strategy on how they handled the collateral damage of all that was horrendous. It's one of the worst I've seen in the business. And everyone, him, his handlers, the academy, they're all liable, culpable for not making really good decisions, I think, in the post handling of that situation,
Aren't you so glad you weren't his publicist? He did something like that, or
Well,
any.
you always hope. When I study the business and I look at I wish I'd have a chance. A chance. What could I do to make that a better situation? And I would have told him, get your ass out of here, go home. Let's get him out of the building immediately. And that's what I would have said. And then I would have said, we need to do an apology right away. One statement. He's apologized like 6 or 7 times. You don't apologize for the same thing 6 or 7 times. One time, make it strong, and then move on. Move on with your life. And it's just, and I know Chris Rock too. I mean, and I thought he saved the night in terms of the show by not doing anything more extreme, but these are things that, when you have my job as a strategist, whether it's manager or whatever, or publicist, is to limit collateral damage. But now with social media and everything, when you see something on TV, it creates a visceral reaction. So within a matter of seconds and minutes, everyone in the world could see that. And they're going to change their opinion. They're going to form an opinion based on what they saw. So you're not going to be able to change that opinion. Some people immediately came to his rescue. Other people said, but you're not going to change those opinions. And so for someone like me to come in and say, okay, I can fix this, you can't fix it because it's already out there. All you can do is try to manage it so it has less of an impact. And then the same thing happened with Chappelle, with, in his show and what he was talking about, the LGBTQ community. The idea now that you can be canceled. Yeah, people can just, stop following you completely. That's a new revelation, and the fact that now, that is something that wasn't possible without social media before. To be canceled, the idea of being canceled, you could lose, you'd have to go away a little bit, and maybe stay out of the public eye for a while. But the idea that you're totally canceled forever, and for, the Me Too movement, some of the men that were involved in that, those guys, their careers they've all disappeared.
Is that time period shorter now? People, attention spans are shorter. There are times where you had to just sort of disappear for a little while and then you're able to come back. Is it the same? Is it shorter? Is it quicker? Is it longer? Sort of that.
I think it's a little bit longer because they can milk the story much longer. They can sustain a story much longer. Back in the day, the story would not have, first of all, you couldn't do, it was magazines and radio for the most part. You couldn't sustain a story 24/7.
I got it.
A matter of weeks. And now you can do that.
It's
It
got
just goes
legs.
through waves.
Yeah.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, okay, then some more information comes in. So then it gives that story new life. Like in a matter of 2 days or 3 days, the story can blossom and get bigger because they start collecting more pieces about it, and then that fuels and keeps it going. So the longer the story is in the public eye, then you have to take that into account in terms of the recovery. The recovery is going to be lengthened because of that.
And I think also you look at the Kardashian family and they consistently have to top everything that they do to stay in the limelight. And they've gone to some extremes, including, now they have to incorporate their children because they like being in that fame spotlight. But it requires a lot of work to be in that fame, and they go overtime.
They're an anomaly because what they've accomplished. A lot of people say, well, they have no talent. Well, the biggest talent they have is they created a reality show that has sustained itself for over, a decade. 12 or 15 years, or I don't know how long it's been on TV, but that's what opened the doors for them to all go out, and that was a caveat for them to start their own businesses and to become entrepreneurial. But they use their family as the way, and they're not the first ones that did it, but they're the ones that have done it the most successful. There were some family shows like this back in the 50s, actually, but they didn't have the amount of because of social media, the amount of exposure that they got was not the same. So yeah, there a lot of people think that that's easy. That's not easy to do what they've done.
And without social media, I don't know if they would have died out already. I
think that's a good assessment. I don't think they would have been able to sustain what they've done. But again, they giving up a lot of their lives to and I mean exposed so much that I don't think the average family would be willing to share with the public at large.
Mm-hmm. Back at you, Greg.
Stephen posted a couple of questions. One is a distinction between a publicist and a spin doctor.
So the difference between a spin doctor is kind of a slang for what we were talking about. So a crisis manager. For example, one of my most famous spin doctor cases was with my ex-wife, Vanessa Williams, because I was brought in with a 72-hour window. A lot of people think that she had a career before this whole Miss America flap happened, but she didn't have a career. She just won a pageant, and it happened very fast. She wasn't raised in a pageant. So some people do have careers who are in these pageants since the time they were five years old. She was in 2 pageants, Miss New York, and then she won that, and in 6 months she became Miss America. But the pageant, when the pictures came out, the pageant, Albert Marks said, you have 70, we want you to resign. We're giving you 72 hours to let us know if you're willing to resign. And I was brought in, I had met with her handler, and I was brought in to handle how do we handle that? What's going to happen in that 72 hours? And at the end of it, what are we going to say? And I was the one who orchestrated that. And that would be a case of a spin doctor. So the crisis is the 72 hours. What is her statement going to be? And what's the spin that I can put on that? Publicist, if you're a publicist, that's part of my responsibility. But if you don't have a crisis, then you don't really need to be a spin doctor per se.
Yeah.
That's where the term comes from. A publicist is really a person who gets free advertisement. Media, if you paid for advertisement in media, if you bought that same amount and you get a story and a photo that amounts to a full page of advertisement, that's how you can kind of equate publicity. And so your job is to orchestrate and get as much media coverage on whatever your client is doing as possible in a way in which it can strategically help and influence the commercial sales of whatever they're doing.
It used to be that expression, there's no such thing as bad publicity, you know.
Yeah, and that's not true because I think, again, Vanessa was a good case of that. It took 10 years for her to really overcome the weight of that
Wow.
incident on her life. Yeah.
Wow.
What do you feel are some of the opportunities for people of color, black folks, to get in as publicists, managers of entertainers? 20, 30 years ago, there were a lot of different firms. A lot of them have shrunk. Same thing with casting. A lot of it is contracted. So what advice would you give for someone who is looking to get into this field?
Well, I think you have to do your homework and understand, pick the area that you think you're most qualified to deal in. Or are you saying just in entertainment or in general?
No, just publicists or managers.
Right.
Publicists.
So I think that the key I would say is to make sure that you're really updated on what the status, the paradigm of where the industry that you want to go in, where is it, and where could you play a role in, because I think to be a good publicist, you have to have a really good understanding. You have to be able to research and have a great understanding of what you're promoting, what you're trying to market. It's the same thing as a manager, is really know your brand. What is your brand? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And then how would you highlight those and shine a light on the strengths as opposed to the weaknesses? One of the ways that I got involved in being a publicist was writing was a big tool, because most people don't come in when you're young. You don't just get contacts through osmosis. So you have to figure out a way. What's one thing that I could get someone to pay me for publicity? Writing press releases, doing bios, doing column items. If you're able to write, that would give you an inroad and give you an opportunity for someone could pay you so that you could learn and develop your contacts, and then strategically learn how to use those contacts. And when I got involved in the business, there was, like I said, there was no social media, there were no phones, cell phones, whatever. I used to go to a newsstand. I would take a pad with me. There was a well-known newsstand in LA on Cahuenga Boulevard. Yeah. And I used to take a pen with me, and I'd put my pad inside, and I would write down the names of all the journalists that I wanted to develop relationships with. I'd glance through their stories that they had written. So then when I wrote to them for the first time, there's tons of egos. I would massage ego. Hey, I read your story about so and so. I have someone that I think you would be interested in. Blah blah blah. And the guy I used to go there every week, and that's how I literally built my network. And the guy used to say, "Hey man, you never buy any magazines. You just look at them." I say, "Hey man, I'm just trying to figure out which ones I like and which ones I don't." And, I'm sorry, I glanced at them all, but I was writing my ass off, just like, and that's how I built my list. Because when you go to a big company, you find that not everybody's going to just open their door. Not everyone's going to help you. So you have to come in with some research, some ways to be creative and build your own list.
That was a great newsstand back there. I remember that.
Yeah, that was back the number one place to go. Yeah.
Yeah. You met a lot of people standing out there. Yeah. You mentioned Rogers and Cowan. I was trying to remember, because I know you and I met many, many years ago, and you mentioned Rogers and Cowan because I used to work with Tom Tardio at Columbia Pictures.
Uh-huh.
And I met you. We were at I remember it was someone's house, and I was just so amazed. I think it was in Beverly Hills, and I was just amazed. Like, this is somebody's house. It was huge, and a fountain. And you and I met, and this would have been late '80s, and I was standing there. I think I was with Tom or chatting with Tom. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what happened to him or where he is these days, but he was a pretty good guy.
Yeah. No, I've been very fortunate in the business. I did have some, I consider Bob Jones a mentor, the guy that I told you hired me at Motown. And I learned a lot from him. And then I learned a lot from a guy named Shep Gordon, who was the only management company that I ever worked with other than my own. I worked under Shep, and he had, that's why I worked with Luther Vandross. I represented him. I was like his day guy in LA. And Shep also managed Alice Cooper. He managed Gino Vanelli, the Gypsy Kings, Reggie Calloway, and his brother Vincent. It used to be in Midnight's. What was their group? They were in a big, very successful R&B group, but they had their own. They were starting to develop a duo as songwriter producers. And those are all that's right around it. And they also had Teddy Pendergast. So these are all around that same time in the mid '80s and early '90s. Yeah.
If you will take sort of the next minute to 2 minutes, kind of summarize, talk about your book, where it's available, and activities. What's on the horizon? What's next for you?
Well, my book has been out since it was released on August 16th. It was released by HarperCollins and Amistad, which is their sort of ethnic imprint. They've done books on Muhammad Ali, Marvin Gaye's wife, Jan Gay. They've had some really great books out. Jennifer Lewis is on that print as well. So it's they're the third largest publisher in the world, and book publishing. So the book is available everywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstores. Yeah, I'd love for people to buy it so I can write another one. Every book is, it's funny because, being a manager and being with famous people, I'm not famous as an author. So I'm a first time author, and I'm kind of like, I'm out there hustling and trying to get some attention on it. Like I was telling a friend of mine, they said, how the book's going. I said, well, I'm like an artist with no hits, because I don't have a hit. This is my first book. But ultimately, I do want to write another book. I'd like to continue to write. It took 3 years in the making to get it done, and from the first iteration to getting an agent, getting a publisher, writing the book, going through different, but it's 100% me. I wrote every word in the book, and I'm proud of it. I'm getting a good response to it, and I just hope people will enjoy it and get some benefit out of it if they choose to buy it.
You should be requesting. We're gonna make sure you request that everyone review it, because I think when you get to 100 reviews, and then you get on the bestseller list, so we can help you with that.
Any reviews, anything, I'm out there pimping it. What can I tell you?
Well, we'll help you.
So, but it's a good lesson, and it goes back to, like I said, it's different kinds of, I've been very fortunate, and a lot of people know me because of the success that I've contributed to other famous people, and I always take that with a grain of salt, because what I do is a team concept. I can't take 100% credit for any. I've worked with great teams, and I've been able to orchestrate great teams, but it's not a one. There's no I in team. It wasn't just me, and then really it's just a talent. I've been very fortunate to work with great talent. I'm not as excited or inspired to continue to be a manager, but I do like working for projects, different types of projects in the entertainment business that I get excited about, and I think would resonate with the public. And so I'm still developing some projects as a producer, as well as hoping to write some other project on a couple of other books, and just to be open to. I have no plans to retire. I don't know what I would do. I'm not really a golfer, so I don't have any plans. I just want to be active and continue to stimulate my life and have new challenges. So that's really my goal for the future.
Any plans for any on-screen credits? The movies, TV.
No, I'm really happy being behind the scenes. I don't need to be like this. I'm not trying to be a star or, That's I'm happy to let other people that are trained to do that. That's never been. I've been, earlier on in my career, people said, you should do this, you should do that. I go, no, man, I'm cool with what I do. I don't mind being in behind the scenes. I have had one guy that told me he thought I should do a documentary based on my book. But we were going to do it. If we do it, it will be in a different way than a normal one. So I don't want to be on camera for an hour talking about my book. So
I do think you made a great point earlier on when you said how you did your research in your work. I think even as a small business entrepreneur, the same thing. You have to really you have to put the work in. It's just not, none of this is going to come just to you off just because you're blessed. It's not just luck, it's the work you put in. So
right.
I would assume that has a lot to do with your successful career.
No, I really think that's really important. And getting back to your question, Gregory, is about being a publicist or a manager. You know, you really do have to research and stay abreast of trends that can affect your business, or your clients. And I think I think when you go to someone, if you're not thinking of being an entrepreneur and you want to get hired, you're going to impress them with your knowledge of coming in. And I think there's a real gap in that. I've interviewed and tried to help a lot of young people who have no clue what they're doing. They don't really know some really basic things. And, with Google and everything, and you can't go to Google and just Google once. You get a germ of something, but if you Google something 20 times, it leads you, it's like being a detective. And if you have that zest for knowledge, you'll finally get to the just of being able to write something that's constructive, because there's a lot of errant information on Google too. So you can't just say, oh, okay, well, I Googled this and whatever. You have to really research and go through that process to get authentic information, because we're in an age where information or the quality of journalism is really at its lowest. Almost anyone can put something up and post it as fact. And if you don't really do your homework, you can be totally misaligned.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any book signings coming up? There's a couple of black-owned bookstores, both here and.
I'm hoping to do one, a few. I'm lining it up. The other thing I learned when you're a first-time author, you have to pay for everything. So I'm trying to manage my own budget in terms of how many places I can go. And when you're a big star, like when I handled Bette Midler, I got them to pay for an 8-city tour, first-class airfares, hotels. They had to commit to a marketing plan in every city. They had to take a full-page ad out in all the major metropolitan newspapers. So the New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, those kinds of things. I don't have that kind of excess cash to put together that kind of tour for myself. But I'm working it out. I'm strategically budgeting what I can afford and what I can think can be most effective.
Got a few cases of books and a folding table in the trunk of your car?
No, I'm not. I don't think I'm going down that route.
No, he has to be his own publicist, which is kind of like being your own doctor, huh? He got to take his hat off for other people and put it on. But I will say this, Ramon. I would go to the university route. They pay.
Yeah.
I would go to reach out to a number of them that have drama departments and literary departments and journalists, and I would promote myself there because they will pay you.
Guest speaking. I'm scheduled to do something in October at NYU, so that's going to be. I'm looking forward to doing that. And I have, say you don't have any like a trunk, but last night I took one book, a bag, and an Uber, and I signed it and gave it away to a friend of mine. His name is Patrick Riley, and he does this karaoke week every Wednesday night at this little dive bar on the east side, East Harlem. So I trucked over there. It was only about 10 minutes from my house, and I waited and I gave my book away. I signed it. So that's something I would have, not thinking I want to do a lot of that, but your friends that want to support you, you want to support them too. You got a little juice for me. I got a little juice, but I just thought it was funny. Here I am peddling my little book. I do those things sometimes.
Well, we're gonna make a request. Everyone is here. Please go out and buy his book and review it, and then tell your friends so he don't have to take his card table out the trunk of the Uber or on the subway.
Right. Well, I did Uber. That's that's a good sign.
That's pretty cool. Yes, it's always interesting on the other side of the table, huh?
Yes. Well, I've gone through this, and put together like budgets on a string to do videos. Like, okay, we got $1,500. How can we pull this video to make it look like $50,000? I know how to be creative on budgets.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm sure the schools the universities would love to have you. My nephew's at SCAD down at Savannah.
Okay.
I'm sure they would love to have you down there. That seems to be an amazing school for the creative artists in all genres.
It's a very challenging. I did some other research, and only 5.8% of all the authors out there are Black. We only account for 5.6% of a multi-billion-dollar business.
Yeah. We have to do a whole. I don't know if you know Dr. Rosie Milligan. She actually helps for the smaller Black authors. She does a book on tour every year, and then she really promotes them. Because of that, because they don't have budgets, and usually they have books and they sit in closets and garages, and they don't have marketing budgets, so they don't go anywhere.
It's tough, and I've had people that have authors, friends say, could you help me? I go, well, do you have any money? And they go, no. I say, well, then I don't know what I could, you got to pay even for social media, to get someone to do that for you, so there's all these, all this tech business has also created finance more money, but then it causes, more expense.
Yeah.
To get the benefit of it, unless you can do it all yourself.
Yeah, but that's, the organic, you have to pay. Just like everything else, you have to pay.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, you are awesome. I just downloaded your book just now, and I'm getting ready on my Audible, and then I'm getting ready to purchase it as soon as I get off. So, and I will share it around, make sure everybody I know does it for you. We'll make sure that when this goes on LinkedIn and Facebook and everyone, that we will put the link in there so that everyone can purchase.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the time and the support. Just getting. I didn't know about your site or anything.
Well, we're very honored. We're very honored that you committed to coming on, or agreed to come on.
I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Who's gonna Stephen, I'll have the link when I get back, and then we'll make sure we get this all out for you. We'll use social media and also some of our friends.
And Ramon, I don't know if you gathered, but Gregory is also from New York. So when you do happen to have a book signing, and I go to New York probably once every other month, please let us know.
Okay, I will.
And we probably can be instrumental also for any activity you want to do in Los Angeles. And I'm in the South right now in Atlanta, and I have some connections. So part of the
I will definitely keep you in the loop, because I am planning one in Los Angeles for sure. That's like my second home. My mom lives out there, and so I could definitely, I'll let you know about that one. And then there's one I want to do in the city, but I'm kind of weighing one against the other. And I'm also going to do one. A friend of mine owns a restaurant in New Rochelle, and they want to do one out there. It's called Alvin and Friends. It's a Black-owned restaurant, and they have a Black-owned, I think, a Black-owned bookstore in New Rochelle that they want to align with. So I told them they've been my friends for years, and so I told them I would do something with them. We just haven't figured out the date yet. But I didn't know that where you guys are all located. But either of those two places, I will definitely keep you informed.
Okay.
Yolanda has a quick question, and also Malik Bookstore. He has two locations, and that's all he sells is black books. Malik's. Yolanda, and then we're gonna wrap it up. We've gone over a little bit.
Okay, I will be very quick. All I want to say is thank you, Mr. Ramon Hervey. I would like to have you on my radio show. You look just like my brother, Rod McGrew. So I'd be honored to have you on my show.
Wait, your brother's Rod McGrew? Oh, wow. Tell Rod I said hi. He knows me from years.
Sure will. I sure will. So I put my information
Way back with Stevie and yeah, I've known Rod for, I don't know, 30 years, I think, or something like that. When I used to live in LA, I used to see Rod all the time.
Okay.
Great
Well,
guy.
there you go. Look at that already.
Right. I put my information in the chat. Change matters at Intentional Talk Radio Network. So,
Well, Steve has my email address. Stephen, could you give her my email address and I'll follow up with you directly that
Will do,
way?
Yolanda.
great. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Ramon
much.
Harvey, Ramon, this right here will be recorded and put on YouTube. We'll send the links and share with the professional network.
Okay.
Thank everyone for joining us today.
All right.
If you like what Ramon had said today, tune in next week, where our special guest is our own Kevin Michael Caleb. We'll talk about financial strategy for small, medium-sized Black businesses. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
All right, guys. See you later. Thank you, Ramon. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Let me see. We're still live. Let's see. Why can't I stop it?
Let me make you host again.
Oh, there you go. All right. Okay.